Yeah, it's just us now. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. Someone was telling me that it's a good time to be a basketball fan in Connecticut. Yeah. UConn, the Huskies. Who stayed up to watch it? Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't raise your hand in here, you could get run out. Everybody. People didn't watch it, not putting their hands up.
And let's hear about hockey.
And
Hockey.
That's right. Yeah.
What a PA.
Thanks everyone for coming to our event. We're joined tonight by author Jeff Benedict. We're grateful that you've all come out. We're excited to celebrate the release of the new book, LeBron. It's remarkable. Also, I noticed things like this. It's one of the only books I've ever seen that has no words on the cover. Because what does it need? You're like just that you want to show them the cover in case nobody's seen that yet. Excellent. After a brief introduction, we'll turn the time to Jeff. We'll hear more about the book. After the event, we'll have a signing line right next door where you can get your copy signed of the book. You can also buy a book if you'd like next door at the register. We have copies also of Dynasty, previous title from Jeff. We have a few copies of that available also. Jeff Benedict is the best-selling author of 17 nonfiction books. Anybody read all of them? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, the rest of you have some work to do. Yeah. He's the co-author of the #1 New York Times bestseller Tiger Woods and author of The Dynasty, the definitive inside story of the New England Patriots. Jeff is also a film and television producer. He lives in Connecticut. LeBron, the new book is LeBron, destined to be the authoritative account of LeBron James's life. The book is a gripping, inspiring, and unprecedented portrait of one of the world's most captivating figures. Sounds cliche, but I started reading LeBron just a few nights ago and found it hard to put down. And I tend to gravitate actually more toward fiction, not as much nonfiction. This book read like a narrative, it read like a story. It was hard to put down with a great balance of sports writing, details from a lot of the games that many of you have probably seen, and then from LeBron's personal life as well. And the other thing I noticed is this is a book. Though the childhood of LeBron James was challenging in many ways, a lot of focus is inspirational. Some of the people and figures who helped this young man realize his dreams and accomplish some pretty remarkable things along the way. If you don't already have a copy of LeBron, don't worry, we have some just in the other room for you to purchase. We're a bookstore, that's what we do. And now we'll have Jeff Benedict.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say up front that it's really, hey, Mike, it's great to look around and see so many friends and people that I've known in different capacities over the last, I don't know, big chunk of my life, I guess I'll just say. And no place I'd rather start a book tour than in a couple of bookstores that are really close to my home where I live and where I've grown up, and where I can actually invite people that I've known, for a long time, and that I remember from when I was a kid in some cases. And so this is really neat for me to come to a place like RJ Julia and talk about books. My wife and I were having dinner across the street before we came over here, and she was got me thinking about a few things that I wasn't thinking before coming here to do this talk tonight. We were just talking about writing and how you make a book, and how there's a lot of things that go into it that you don't really think about when you go to a bookstore and buy a book. And I thought maybe I'd say just a couple quick things about that, and then a couple of things about the book, and then let's just talk. I'd love to just take questions and go from there. But I think what I want to say first is this wasn't my idea to do LeBron, actually, and it's a fantastic idea, but the book that I wanted to write was a book about the Patriots. And so when I finished writing Tiger Woods, my publisher asked me to come in and had a chance to meet with them and talk about what I wanted to do next. I mean, they literally said, why don't you come in and tell us what you want to do next? And it was a wonderful opportunity, because usually when you finish a book, you talk about it with your agent and your editor, but you don't get to have a conversation with the publisher. That just, at least for me, that's not normal. And for most writers, I think that's pretty unusual, but the publisher of Simon Schuster wanted to host this meeting, so we had in his office, and he doesn't really follow sports. He's not a sports guy. He published Tiger Woods because he thought it was a great idea for a book, because he's a transcendent figure that people are interested in all over the world, and even people that don't follow golf started watching golf because of Tiger, and it was a no-brainer to do Tiger. I knew going in that I was going to pitch this idea to do a book on the Patriots, and that it would be a high hurdle to get him to say yes to that, especially for getting anywhere close to the kind of money that I got for Tiger. Like it would be hard to do that. And so I went in, and there's four of us. There's me, my editor, my agent, and then the publisher. So we're in a foursome, kind of all facing each other. And so he said, so what do you want to do next? And I made this, what I thought was as good of a pitch as I could make to Patriots. And keep in mind the time, it's February 2018. The Eagles have just beat the Patriots. And it looks like the dynasty's winding down. You know, everybody's saying it's at the end, and Belichick and Brady are probably going to break up soon. And it looked like it was at the end. And that's why I thought this is the time to come in now while they're still together and write a definitive account of what they've done for 20 years. And so I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I remember what I said. I don't, but I just made as good of a pitch as I could make. And I was waiting for him to say no, like it's not really for us. But he said, I just remember very calmly he looked at me and he said, that's a great idea. It's a great idea. And we'd love to give you a contract to do that. But you need to get access to the team first. And I said, well, that could take a long time. And he said, that's okay, you know, come up with another idea in the meantime. And I said, well, you know, it's hard to come up with good ideas that are commercially viable ideas. It's not like they're just coming out of the sky everywhere. And so I said, that is my idea. Like, I've given you a good idea. You said it was good. And so I don't have any other ones. Like, that's it. And I passionately wanted to do this. And so I said, maybe you guys could come up with an idea. And so that's how the meeting ended. And we reconvened about a month later. Same four people, same office, same configuration. And he started this conversation out by saying, how about LeBron? It gives me chills just thinking about that, because like that moment when he said that, I was like, I didn't even look at my agent to say, what do you think? I was just like, yes, that's a great idea. I would do that. Yeah, I would love to do that. And sometimes you get an opportunity that's presented to you that you shouldn't think about. You don't need to consult people. You don't need to talk about it. If you're a person of faith, you don't need to pray about it. You don't need to do any of those things. You just need to do it. Just do it. And that was one of those things where as soon as I heard, what about LeBron? I was like, yes. And to be honest, I had never even thought about LeBron James as a book topic. And it's not someone I would have picked. But the minute he said it, I knew it was an incredible idea. And I thought, you know, yeah. And so we agreed right there in principle that I would do it. And then my agent and the editor got to work on the details of the contract, and that took a month or whatever, but I knew what I was going to do. And I was saying to someone the other day, if I had actually thought about it, I probably wouldn't have done it, because I probably would have talked myself out of it thinking about how hard this is going to be to do. And if I'd started thinking about how intimidating of a subject he is, I definitely would probably say, maybe not, maybe pass. Because the truth is, working on the Patriots book was very intimidating for me. My wife can attest to that. I was scared at times, and I'm not afraid to admit that, but I was, because it was an intimidating environment to work in. And going to Gillette Stadium and being inside with those guys was intimidating. I'm not afraid to admit that, it was, it was scary at times, and I mean, Belichick and Kraft and Brady are intense people. And there's a reason that they dominated the most competitive sport for 20 years. It's because of the way they go about things, and I suddenly found myself in that environment, and it was intimidating. And I knew this was going to be intimidating too. And so I'm glad I just said yes, and then just kind of went in. And it's been an incredible experience. I've loved it. And I'm going to just read one short passage because he mentioned the cover. This was a big decision. Put what you put on a cover. Cover is an advertising pitch. I mean, this is a sales pitch for a book. There's thousands of books in this store, and there's only a couple where you remember the cover. That's it. I mean, it's reality. You could look at all these covers and you'll forget them all tomorrow. I wanted a cover that people could never forget. And so you have to have elements that are unforgettable. Well, one thing that is immediately unforgettable is there are no words on the cover. And that just doesn't happen in publishing. I knew I wanted this because we tried this with Tiger. It was a bold experiment to do a book cover with no title and the author's name not on it, nothing. Just no blurbs about how great the book is. Forget all that crap. Just Tiger's picture, half of his face. That's it, no title. But everyone in the world, when they saw that book, and I say in the world because we sold that book all over the world, everybody knew what that was when they saw it. And I thought we should do that again. And we should do it with this guy because he is every bit as recognizable as Tiger Woods all over the world. And I said to my editor, I said, I really don't want my name on the cover of the book. And I said, are you okay with that? And he goes, dude, my editor's funny. He's very articulate, but he goes, dude, that's music to my ears. He goes, authors would never say they don't want their name on the cover. And I said, I do not want my name on the cover because it would muck up the cover, right? This is great. And it's just such a, and then we went through, I can't tell you how much time to find the right photograph and to license it and to get this cover. So a lot went into that. And here are the, here's the piece I want to just read. The other thing is, by the way, there's no pictures. And somebody said something about that to me yesterday. How come your book doesn't have any pictures? And I said, I don't like pictures in books because then people buy the book and the first thing they do is they go to the photographs and they look at all the pictures before they start reading. It ruins the story. And it also is lazy because then the reader doesn't have to do any imagining because they just see the story. Pictures are laid out chronologically in photo inserts. The first picture is baby LeBron, and then there's a picture of him dunking the ball for the first time. And then there's his high school uniform.
Yes.
And then he, at the end, he's raising the trophy when he wins the final. It's like, okay, there's his life in pictures. What do we need to read for? And so no words on the cover, no pictures in the book, no prologue, introduction, author's note, all that other garbage that clutters up the manuscript. I wanted to just get in there. And so this is how the book starts. Chapter 1, which is called What Just Happened. And I'm only going to read the opening to the opening. A motorcade of shiny black SUVs exited Westchester County Airport and crossed into Connecticut, meandering along wooded back roads before turning onto a smoothly paved private drive, lined on both sides with stone walls and large leafy oaks and maples. In the back seat of one of the vehicles, 25-year-old LeBron James sat beside 23-year-old Savannah Brinson, his soulmate since high school and the mother of their 2 little boys. In his eyes, she was the one thing more enchanting than the idyllic scenery visible through the windows as they eased to a stop in front of a house on an estate in Greenwich. Wearing black shades, a white t-shirt, and black cargo pants, James stepped out and looked around. Golden light from the late afternoon sun shone through the property's white picket fence, illuminating the lush green lawn, pink and purple impatiens, and chocolate-colored mulch. A stone path led to the sprawling New England Colonial. It was Thursday, July 8th, 2010, and James had come to rehearse, have dinner, and relax. In a few hours, he was set to appear on a primetime special on ESPN to reveal his decision whether to remain with the Cleveland Cavaliers or join one of the 5 teams that had been courting him for more than a year. The world's most celebrated basketball player couldn't foresee that by the end of the night, he would be the most hated athlete in all of sports. Now, just want to say a couple things about that. I spent a ridiculous amount of time writing that little opening because it's, to me, that's the most important words in the whole book. Because it does a lot of things. It puts you in a car with LeBron. It allows you to ride in the car with him from an airport to a place that most people in America, and certainly outside of America who read this book, have never visited, Greenwich, Connecticut. A fairly insular, extremely wealthy community that most people they've heard about, but they've never actually been there. And there's this great contrast that LeBron has arrived there. And it puts him in time and in place. There's a date that tells you this is 2010. This is not LeBron as a little boy. This is not LeBron as a rookie. This is also not LeBron who's won a bunch of championships. That hasn't happened yet. And so time and place is really important, but also to signal to the reader that this is going to be intimate. It's a story, and you're going to go for a ride and take a ride with him, the ride of his life. And so from a writing standpoint, I'll tell you what I did to get those scenes. Is first of all, this isn't explained in the back of the book for a reason, but I can say it here, is that I went to the house where all this happened. I drove the route that I'm describing. So I know what it looks like. I went to the house, I went in the house, and I interviewed the man who owns the house and who hosted LeBron that night. And in fact, is the one who set up the whole thing that happened on ESPN that turns out to be a public relations disaster. His name is Mark Dowley, and he works for Ari Emanuel, who runs the biggest talent agency in Hollywood. And he's his right-hand man, but he lives in Greenwich, even though they're headquartered in Los Angeles. And it was his idea to stage the event in Greenwich because A, he lives there. So it provided some natural elements. There was a private airport 5 minutes from his house. That's important. Number 2, there was a place, the Boys and Girls Club of Greenwich, right down the hill, that they could stage the event. That was important. Number 3, he knew the guy who ran the club because he'd given a lot of money to the club. And he knew he could get them to say yes. So all these things mattered when they were trying to figure it out. But what nobody was thinking about, of course, was the PR ramifications of doing it this way. But I wanted to see all this because I had decided that I thought the right place to start LeBron's story was certainly not in the beginning of his life, but in the perhaps most intense moment of his life, when the country turns on him and starts to hate him. And for the first time in his life, he becomes a villain. I wanted to start there because there's so much tension there. And so going to this house and sort of being able to graphically describe what it looked like, it is idyllic, like the white picket fence and the sunlight coming through it and the color of the flowers and the mulch and all that. And you say, well, how do you know all that? Well, because I took the time and went back and got there was a great photo collection. There was a great photographer who was with LeBron that day, and he took pictures of everything. And so I went to Getty and I got all those pictures. And they were perfect. I could see the impatience, I could see the mulch. And I can still see it in my mind because I looked at these so many times. That's how I know exactly what everybody was wearing who got out of the cars and was walking to the house, because I looked at 100 photographs from those moments when they pulled up and when they got out and when they walked in. And those are the things that you have to do if you want to create a narrative that feels like fiction, like he said, because that's what I'm trying to get to, is a story, Not something that just says, well, this happened and then that happened and then he scored 6 points and then there was this trophy and then they did it again next year. But actually get in there and try to, at the right points, feel like you're riding along with him and experiencing what he experiences. So when he gets blindsided, that moment where everybody turns on him, you feel blindsided. Like you don't see this coming, even though you know this is coming because you actually know the story. But I want you to feel blindsided like he did. One other thing, and then we'll just do questions. This is the thing my wife said to me over dinner that I wasn't thinking about talking about, but she kind of reminded me this is really important, is that when you cover someone like LeBron or Tiger, Tom Brady, they meet so many people in their life. And I'm not talking about fans, but I'm just talking about people who intersect with their life that are unusual, that are meaningful, that are competitors, adversaries, friends. They have such unusual lives that they meet so many people. If you're going to write about their life, it forces you have to introduce a lot of characters into the story, which if you're a novelist, that's a deadly trap, right? You don't want to have 100 characters in a book. But LeBron and Tiger and people like that, they have hundreds and hundreds of characters. And so one thing you have to do is, in the beginning, you have to decide who you're going to discard. These are just characters, you know, they're there, but you just can't fit all of them in. And you have to be selective about who are you going to put in and who are you going to leave out. And then once you've decided on who they are, so let's just say this group over here out, this group in, okay, for different reasons. I need this guy, I need her, I need that guy, I need this guy over here. Then the question becomes, how do you introduce them all without getting like way off the track? Because this is the subject. This is who we all bought this to read about. We want to read about this guy. We don't really want to read like 50 pages about this guy, but this guy needs to be in here. And so I was saying to my wife, there's tricks that I've learned over time, how you introduce important characters quickly, get them in, and then get right back to where you need to be. Get them in the guy's life, and then get right back to that guy. And so there's lots of things you can do as a writer, not that this is a writing class, but I did things that I've just picked up over the years. And one of the things that I did is I use things like music, because music can potentially tell you a lot about a guy or a woman, man or a woman. I said a guy because in this case, I'm gonna give you an example of how I did it with a guy. So LeBron meets Sonny Vaccaro, who's the subject of the new Matt Damon, Ben Affleck movie Air, which is just hit theaters last weekend. So how many have seen that, by the way? So a few of us. Matt Damon plays Sonny Vaccaro. Sonny Vaccaro is like the star character of the movie. And I'll just tell you, I love Matt Damon, but he looks nothing like Sonny Vaccaro. Sonny Vaccaro is an older, overweight, Italian Godfather type character. And that's what he looks like. He looks like he could be in the mob. But, you know, he's that kind of guy. He's a great character. And I interviewed Sonny probably 20 to 25 times for this. The guys who did the movie, I think they talked to him once. And I'm not saying that to knock it. I'm just saying I really know Sonny. And I didn't know Sonny until I worked on this book. I met him through this. And I had to build up a relationship with him till he got to the point where he trusted me enough to give me the real gold about his relationship with LeBron, because he didn't want to talk about it at first. And so this is how I introduced Sonny, because I wanted to just make it so that it was clear who he is without making it sound like he's like the second most important character in the book, because he's not, but he's important. And so, I'm sorry.
Couple of big fans come
I'm a big fan. two of my favorite girls in the world. I won't read it just because of time, but basically what I did with Sonny is LeBron's going out to meet him for the first time. It's like an audition. Think of a young actor or actress who's going to get their chance to audition for their first big Broadway play or musical, and they're going to, audition in front of Stephen Sondheim. Think of that. This is like that. LeBron knows he's going to go audition in front of the guy who signed Michael Jordan to his first Nike deal and then signed Kobe Bryant. This is that guy. He's more important than any coach in the NBA, any coach in college. If this guy gets behind you, you're in. Your life is going to change. So he knows that going out there because he knows the whole Jordan thing and the Kobe thing. And so LeBron, I used a song from Tupac called Going to California. And I used the lyrics from that song when LeBron's getting on the plane to fly to Oakland to play a scrimmage game in front of Sonny Vaccaro. And then I put Sonny in his house listening to Mac the Knife from Bobby Darin. Sonny is a huge music fanatic and he loves Bobby Darin. And he loves Frank Sinatra and stuff like that. And so, the lyrics to Mac the Knife, it's a pretty bloody song. It's kind of, if you compare it to Tupac, it seems mild, but it's not if you put it in time. If you think about when Mac the Knife was written, that was an edgy song, very edgy for its time. So I thought this is a great way to contrast the older Italian Godfather figure from Pittsburgh and LeBron, the young African-American kid from the neighborhood in Akron. They listen to totally different kinds of music, and they're as different as two human beings can be, and they're going to come together on a gymnasium in Oakland, and LeBron's going to play in front of him, and Sonny's going to watch and decide whether he thinks his kid is for real. And without giving too much away, my wife just read this chapter that the great moment is like 10 minutes into the scrimmage game, Sonny just walks out of the gym. And the coaches are all like, oh my God. Everybody's panicked because they think this is a disaster. Like, he's obviously not impressed. He just left. And his wife follows him out. She's like, Sonny, she's calling him and he's not talking. He hails a cab. He gets in the cab and they start driving away. The cab says, where do you want to go? He says, the airport. And he's on the way to the airport and, his wife is trying to get out of him what's wrong. And he tells her, he's never seen anything like this. Mm-hmm. This is the guy that found Jordan. I've never seen anything like this. It's just an incredible moment. It's an incredible moment. But the music, the use of the music allowed me to get Sonny. You understand Sonny when you see this guy. I give a little physical description, of course, and all that stuff. But when you got him in his room, like splashing his cologne on, listening to Mac the Knife, you kind of know, like, okay, I get this guy. I get this guy. And you don't need 15 pages of backdrop about who he is. It's just like, all right, it's a little edgy, but he's perfect. He's perfect. Matt Damon looks nothing like him. Okay, let's just do some questions. Anything you want? Well, I grab some water.
So I really enjoyed how you mentioned the importance of going to the place and sort of driving it.
Yep.
The authenticity. So my son is a journalist major at Richmond, and he loves writing stories of sports stories. He's written about 60 of them. And I never have the heart to tell him that in some ways, with the way the world's changing with artificial intelligence, and I teach high school, kids are producing papers without any thought, AI and TV chat. But you seem to be a real example of somebody who invested the time and really, and I always want to make that point to my students that even in a world that's changing so dramatically, where you can bang out an essay in 30 seconds, it's pretty well written.
Yes.
And it might actually achieve a high level on an AP exam.
Yeah.
That isn't really what it is to be authentic, to be human. So do you ever feel pressure as a writer there are probably faster ways to get the book out, but they're not gonna have
Oh, yeah.
the attention to detail, the descriptive power that you obviously take such pride in.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yes, there are faster ways to do it. I mean, this is still fast, to be honest. I mean, but. You know, it's 100 and. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm not. I'm gonna use this to get at your point, but. I wrote about 180,000 words in 12 months. That's not slow, meticulous, take your time stuff. But that's the writing part. The research part is different. And they're two different things. So in order to roll a story out that has all the granular detail, you have to put the time in to figure out what the hell is the story. And if you just use the internet, that's a story. And I know guys who write like that, and their books get sold once, and then they don't get any more book contracts, and they have to go back to doing magazine stuff. And which is fine if they have a good magazine job, but I don't do that. I mean, I don't have a magazine job. I don't want one either because magazines are dead. But if you want to write books and do it actually for a living, like it's a profession, it's not a hobby, it's not something cool, it's actually a job. You're going to pay your mortgage and do all the stuff that everybody else does with real jobs. You have to approach it like a real job. And so there's no shortcuts and fooling around like that. And so like, I have a formula that I follow with every one of these books, and it starts with I read an insane amount of stuff. I mean, for LeBron, I read 35 books. Look, that's not Ron Chernow for Alexander Hamilton. He probably read 75 books, but that's also a historic founding father. This is a basketball player. I read a lot of books that had nothing to do with LeBron, but I thought they would help me better understand the world I was trying to write about. And then I read everything that has ever been written about him, and I created a timeline of his life. It's over 100 pages long, and it's 45,000 words long. It's just a timeline. And that timeline then becomes the basis for an outline of a narrative. But that takes a boatload of time to do. And it's so tedious that most people would go out of their mind just doing that part. And because it's a lot of time just all by yourself. You know, it's not like I have a team of people working with me, it's just me. And but that's also how I don't really want a team, because I want the ability to look at all the material and I get to decide what are the touchstones that should be in the story. I want to put Bobby Darin in this song, in this page. I want to put Jay-Z here and have him come in at this moment when LeBron meets him when he's 18 and he asks him to play on his, team in New York City as a rookie. I want to pick the scenes, the music, so I don't want 5 people chapping at me about you should do this and this. I want to figure all that out myself, but to do that, you got to do the hard part. So it's a long process, but I mean, it's worth it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jeff, I understand that Tiger and LeBron, neither one endorse this.
Right.
And so 2 parts, that part, but the second part is they read this book and you do the work all the work you talk about, the back work, the preparation and hard work, that kind of reflects what they do. I mean, successful. You're doing what they did. And so if I'm nothing like that, I can't golf, I can't play basketball. I would respect just that work ethic and energy and just commitment to what you're doing. That would myself would spur interest in what you do.
Yeah, the reason I said that I was intimidated to do the Patriots book, besides the climate in the building, all the players that have now left the Patriots because they're retired now, even Rob Gronkowski, if you talk to him privately, will acknowledge it's an intimidating place to play. Yeah. The toughest guy in the NFL is telling you privately, like, it's a hard place to play. So as a writer going in there, part of what was intimidating was that, but the other part was I knew how high the standard of excellence was in the building, from the owner down to the coach to the quarterback. And if I'm the one that they're allowing to write the story, that's very intimidating, because I know they're going to read it and they're going to tell me what they think. which is a little different than Tiger and LeBron, because with the Patriots, I wasn't writing a biography. And so, going in, Tiger and LeBron aren't going to participate, because if they wanted a biography written, they do an autobiography, and they would hire the writer, which is what I did for Steve Young. He hired me and he controlled the narrative. I mean, he gave me a lot of freedom to write whatever I wanted, but at the end of the day, he decides what goes in and not. With the Patriots, it was intimidating. And so you're absolutely right. I approached these books, Tiger, Steve Young, LeBron, the Patriots. That's what I'm talking about, is being a little scared, because I know it's going to be judged against them. Like LeBron deserved, and I'm not saying I hit the mark, but I'm just saying, if you're going to write a book about LeBron, you can't mail it in, right? You can't just like slap stuff together, and because it's him, it's like, great. I'm not interested in that. I don't want my name on the cover. I'm trying to deflect from that, but I do want people who are critics, and there's a lot of them. I mean, I just spent an hour on the phone with Chris Russo, who doesn't really care for LeBron, at the Fan. And I know what's going to happen when I get in the interview for an hour on live radio. And so you want to be able to get on those shows and hold up the product and have people say, regardless of what I think about the guy, this is good. This is good. And that's kind of what I would think about all the time. I didn't want to turn something in that was pretty good. I didn't want to turn something in that was, great. I want to turn something in that I knew could not be any better than what I did. Like, I got nothing left in the tank. My wife can tell you, like, when I was done, I was done. Like, physically, mentally, emotionally, completely spent, gone, nothing left to do. That was it. I was gassed. But that's the way it should be, I think, when you're doing this. So, yeah.
Did your opinion of him change when you started to when you finished? Did you see him differently?
I certainly saw him differently, but that happens with everybody, right? I mean, my opinion of LeBron was pretty limited when I started, because I wasn't a fan. I also wasn't like a non-fan, like I don't like him. I wasn't one of those guys. I just, I'm a Celtics fan, right? I mean, LeBron was always the adversary, but I didn't have anything personal against him. So it was more that I just didn't know much about it. And other than the obvious thing that everyone in this room knows about him, is that he's this incredible basketball player, but that's about the extent of it. And so it was a big learning curve. The advantage I had with LeBron that I didn't have with Tiger is I know basketball. I played it, I've coached it. I love the game. I've never played golf in my life. Like my buddy Andy can tell you, like, don't get me near a golf club, that could be dangerous. I've never actually been on a golf course and hit a ball. So to write a book about the greatest golfer of our time, there was a learning curve on the sports side that I didn't have with LeBron or with the Patriots. So that actually helped. But my appreciation for LeBron and my respect just kept growing and evolving as I slogged along, putting things together and thinking, like, there was a point where I remember I called my editor up and said, I'm not comparing what I'm writing to Charles Dickens. That would be ridiculous. But I said, this is like a Dickens story. I'm not saying what I'm writing, but his life is like a Dickens story. And I don't think I did not write this. So my editor writes the copy on the jacket. That's one thing you don't write. The editor does that. And he wrote this. What makes LeBron so compelling is how he won his destiny despite overwhelmingly long odds in a drama worthy of a Dickens novel. I think that was a little gift to me, but that's what it felt like working on it. It's like that. And so how could you not admire that and root for him? And I had a lot of admiration for him while I was writing, but I covered the hard parts too. Yeah.
Having said that, now what you know about now, do you think his greatest chapter is yet to be written?
For LeBron? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, if you asked me that about Tiger, I could give you a definite answer. The answer would be no, without any question. With LeBron, I don't know because, I mean, I'm confident that he's gonna go on and do great things in the entertainment world. The question is he gonna get into politics? And if he does, that, that's why I'd say, I don't know, because if he goes down that road, he's certainly capable of it. He has all the skills to do it. And I think if he did it, he could have a profound impact on the country and on culture. And it would be really interesting, and it could be way more interesting than what he did in basketball. So we'll see. I don't think anybody knows exactly what everybody knows he's gonna be a big force in Hollywood when he gets done, because he's already built all the infrastructure there. He has a company, they're making movies and films, and he'll probably be in some and all that, but even if he just did that, that would be a big deal. But he certainly could do a lot more, and I know how much he looks up to Obama. He really transitioned to politics when Barack Obama was elected, and Jay-Z had something to do with that, because Jay-Z was the one who persuaded him to do a concert to help him get elected. And once that happened, Barack started inviting him to the White House, and not just when he won the championships, but just for other things. And I think he had another black man other than Jay-Z who he could look at and become friends with and build a relationship with that he admired and really admired. I think he admired the way he carried himself as a husband, as a father. He admired the relationship with Michelle, and he admired the way Barack Obama dealt with all the awful things he had to deal with as the first black president of the United States. He was pretty aware of what those things were, and I think it helped him a lot. When 2010 came along and he was the most hated athlete in America, there was one person he could look at who had it worse. And I think it helped. It helped him a lot. So he learned a lot.
One more question?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm just curious in terms of how you get to meet people. I know you met Kraft and then they were supportive, so you got to meet a lot of people with Tiger. I see like he broke so many relationships.
Yeah.
Why not talk? But with LeBron and him not authorizing, how do you get, close people to talk to him? And what, because if he didn't authorize it, you spoke to so many people.
So I'll give you just really quick, because I know that we want to wrap up. 3 different scenarios, all of which were from the book. One is, so I didn't name any of my sources in this book, which is really unusual for me. I always list the names of all the people I interviewed in the back of the book. That's one of the reasons source notes are only 30 pages, which I was really bummed out.
35.
It's 35. But I didn't do that. And the reason I didn't do that was because in this case, I had so many people that I had talked to who asked not to be identified as a source. And the reason for that was because you don't really know how the book's going to come out, how LeBron's going to feel about the book when it comes out. And if you're seen as a participant who aided and abetted the writer, that could be problematic. And so a lot of people that I talked to who are great people, they like LeBron, or they respect him, one or the other, they're willing to talk, but absolutely don't use my name. Okay, fine. And I had so many of those that I thought, well, if I list the people that said it was okay to use your name, it looks like I interviewed 5 people. And so I'm not doing that. And so one of the common things you run into when you're doing a book like this is, and especially for me, because I'm not new, I've been doing this for 25 years. So I know a lot of people that LeBron knows. We know a lot of the same people. And so there's awkwardness. Like when I call Mike Krzyzewski, who probably was LeBron's best basketball coach, he coached him for 8 years with the Olympic teams. I have a relationship with Coach K because I was the first writer to ever profile him for Sports Illustrated. And I did a cover story. He let me in the program. I spent a year at Duke. He'd never done that in 36 years. So I have a relationship with him, and it's a really good one. He trusts me. But he also has a really good relationship with LeBron, and LeBron trusts him. So I call Mike because I want to interview him. I know what he's going to say. He's going to say, Jeff, I like you. I like you a lot. And I trust you. But you know, I can't talk to you until I talk to LeBron. And that is exactly what he said to me. And I said to him, Mike, I would be surprised if you said something different. Right? So he goes and does that. And a few weeks go by and Mike contacts me again and says, okay, what do you want to know? So what does that tell me? That tells me he made the call. He got the blessing from LeBron to talk. I don't think he was told what he could and couldn't say. He just told, I'm not cooperating with the guy, but I don't have any problem with you talking to him. And Coach K talked. It was a fantastic interview. It's a great interview. And if he had called me back and said, hey, unfortunately, I can't do it, I would have said, I get it. I totally understand. In fact, there were people that I said that to, that I did say it to. And so it's all about, basically I said this to some kids the other day, that this isn't a book I could have written 15 years ago, because a lot of it is learning as you go. Like, actually, the guy I said that to was Rick Coster of The Day. He wrote this article about me last Sunday in The Day. And when Rick came to my office to interview me, we were talking about Without Reservation and Little Pink House. And those books were very different than these books. Those were much more hard-hitting, investigatory, like the gloves are off, just like you're taking on Foxwoods and the Tribe and it's going to be a brawl. And I don't do that anymore. But part of that is just like, I love those books. Like I learned in those books, but I've made all these relationships in 25 years with all kinds of people in all these different industries. When I was writing the Warren Buffett scenes in this book, where LeBron is in his office, I didn't have to go to Omaha to see the office, because I've been in Warren's office. I've interviewed Warren with a camera, following around with a video camera. I know Warren Buffett. So it's like, I know what his desk looks like. So when I'm describing it in the book, it's because I have been in that room. And all I'm saying about that is it's like learning to navigate different relationships and figure out how to approach people and deal with the politics are real. People have relationships, and understanding sometimes that when someone tells you no, it's not because they're being a jerk. It's not because they have something to hide. It's just because it's too complicated for them to talk. And you have to respect that. And just like, I get it, it's fine. And those are usually the ones, this happened with the Patriots book. Those are usually the ones when the book comes out, they call you up and say, I should have talked to them. I mean, I had numerous Patriots players do that after. And fortunately, now they're talking to us for the documentary, which, that's just as great, if not better, because now they're on camera and they're really opening up more so than they would have in the book. So, yeah, great question. Yeah. Thanks, John.
You guys, I'm sure there's a lot more questions. If you have more questions, feel free to come say hi to Jeff as he's signing books.
Put the book down.
Thank you. No, actually, I have one upstairs that I'll have with him. So everyone, thanks Jeff for coming.
Let's say something really quick. Yeah, I'm gonna get really fast. I'm just gonna say this because there's a friend here who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. I'm not gonna single him out, but what John just asked me is really important. Here's an example of how important that is. I mentioned that book, Little Pink House. I had an experience when that book came out where the Connecticut Supreme Court invited me to come to their dinner in New Haven and speak. It was controversial for me to come and talk at dinner. And I said yes, but I said I wanted to bring Suzette Kelo with me, who was the woman who lost her house and lost the court case. And that was even more controversial. And initially they told me she couldn't come because they didn't have any more seats and they didn't have tickets. And I said, well, she can have my seat and eat my dinner. But I do want to bring her with me. And eventually they said yes, and she came and she sat at the table and I gave a speech and the justices were all there that night. The Chief Justice of the Connecticut Supreme Court was seated at the table that I was at, as were one or two other justices and their spouses. When it was over, I said something about Suzette that made Suzette start crying. And there were other people in the room that got emotional as well. And when it was over, of course, people came up and nobody came up to see me, which was great, but they all went up to see her, as it should be. And one of the justices on the Supreme Court came up, and there were a bunch of people who saw this and heard it. And he said to her, first he apologized, which I thought was incredible. And then he said, if I had known then what I know now, I would have voted different. He voted the other way. And it was a one vote difference. And then she really started crying. And at the time, my publisher was talking about bringing out a paperback edition. And when I told my editor that story, I said, this needs to go in the paperback, in the epilogue. And the lawyer for my publisher was scared and told me, you can't do that. And I said, why? He said it. There were 10 witnesses. Everybody heard the same thing. I know exactly what he said. And anyways, I lost that one. So I went to the Hartford Courant and I asked the editor if I could write an essay for the op-ed page of the Hartford Courant and put that in it. And they were really nervous. And so I went to the justice who said it. And I actually showed him what the column would say, including his quotes. And told him what I was going to do and asked him if it was okay. And he allowed it. And so the Courant ran it. And this justice, I really liked. He had invited me to bring my 4 children to the Supreme Court, took them in the locker room, put the judicial robes on my kids, and let them sit where the justices sit in the court. I have the pictures of it on my phone now. It was a great moment of pride for me to be able to, as a lawyer who was sworn in Connecticut, but doesn't practice, to take my kids to a place that I will never perform in. It meant a lot. I liked him immensely. He and I have never spoken since that article appeared in the Hartford Courant. I've reached out to him again and again and again, and he's never responded to my emails, to my phone calls, anything. And I'm telling you that just as an example of what I mean about how tricky it can be. Relationships can be complicated, especially when people are in positions of power and influence, and it's just not, it's not easy, this stuff. And even when I was trying to do it the right way and not go behind his back, make sure that he knew what was going to be in the paper, the ramifications for him, I think, were such that he regretted that it happened. He never blamed me. I don't know if he blamed himself. I don't know who he blamed, but that's all I'm saying, John. The question you raise is a huge, huge question. So, thanks.
Yeah.